In this documentary-style exploration, we will focus on 25 actresses from the 1960s and 1970s who embodied the era's spirit. What unites them all is the profound influence they had on film and on our collective understanding of what it means to be a woman on screen. Let's begin this journey through time and memory, shining a spotlight on each of these remarkable actresses. First, Jane Fonda. We start with Jane Fonda, a name synonymous with bold choices, both cinematic and political. By the late 1960s, she had begun carving out a reputation for playing characters who defied the usual Hollywood good girl image. Then came Barbarella, a sci-fi adventure featuring a space-traveling heroine whose costumes left little to the imagination. But Barbarella was only the prelude. In 1971, Fonda took on the role of Bree Daniels in Clute, playing a high-end New York call girl grappling with a serial killer's pursuit. This portrayal juxtaposed glamour with raw vulnerability, culminating in scenes that were unsettlingly authentic. Her nudity in Clute carried a powerful undercurrent. It was a statement of a woman's struggle for control in a male-dominated world. Fonda's performance won her an Academy Award for Best Actress, and it shattered the mold of what a Hollywood leading lady could be. Off-screen, she was equally revolutionary, becoming an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War and a prominent voice in the feminist movement. While some of her earlier roles exploited her image, she grew to harness her own power, pushing for female agency in the scripts she chose. Her transformation from sex symbol to activist artist influenced a generation of actresses who realized they could leverage their fame for real-world impact. 2. Maria Schneider. If Jane Fonda exhibited a deliberate pursuit of transformation, Maria Schneider became an emblem of the darker side of cinematic boundary pushing. Barely out of her teens, Schneider catapulted to notoriety in 1972 for her role opposite Marlon Brando in Last Tango in Paris. The film was heralded as a triumph of raw, unfiltered emotion by some and condemned as scandalous by others. But beneath the headlines and the hype lay a much bleaker reality. Schneider later spoke out about how she was pressured into a shocking scene that she did not fully consent to. The experience left her traumatized. Although the film cemented her place in cinema history, the price was far too high. Schneider's career never fully escaped the shadow of that role, yet her candid admission in later interviews sparked a needed conversation about exploitation and consent on set. A conversation that resonates in Hollywood's ongoing debates about safe and respectful workplaces. Charlotte Rampling. British actress Charlotte Rampling navigated the 1970s with a quiet magnetism that cloaked her unflinching courage. She was never afraid to tackle deeply disturbing or taboo subjects, and The Night Porter remains the prime example of her audacity. In it, she portrayed a Holocaust survivor entangled in a twisted relationship with her former Nazi tormentor. Rampling's performance was as fearless as it was unsettling. Scenes that exposed her, both physically and psychologically, forced audiences into a confrontation with the darkest aspects of human nature. She wasn't interested in comfortable viewing. She compelled viewers to question their own capacity for empathy, disgust, and confusion. If the 1970s were about shattering conventions, Rampling took a sledgehammer to them, embracing roles that demanded her full emotional range. Her approach to nudity, when it occurred, was never simply for spectacle. It was a tool, one she employed to deepen the complexity of a character's psyche or to peel back the layers of an already tense storyline. Even decades later, Charlotte Rampling's 1970s filmography remains a testament to how vulnerability on screen can be harnessed to reveal universal truths rather than just shock value. 4. Pam Grier. When it comes to raw, no-holds-barred power in 1970s cinema, Pam Grier's name stands out like a beacon. She headlined cult classics such as Coffee and Foxy Brown, turning the blaxploitation film genre into a platform for showcasing strong black women, something practically unheard of at that time. Grier's characters were unapologetically fierce, taking on criminals, corruption, and misogyny all at once. She wasn't just playing a part, she was redefining what it meant to be a female lead in action-driven narratives. Nudity in Grier's roles sometimes appeared, but it served as an extension of her character's tenacity rather than mere exploitation. Audiences had rarely seen a woman of color seize the screen with such self-assuredness and command. In an industry that routinely sidelined Black women, Grier carved out a powerful legacy, proving that talent, determination, and a refusal to fit into neat boxes could open new doors. To this day, her influence resonates with actresses who see her as a trailblazer who played by her own rules. Fünfte Susan Sarandon. Before she was winning Oscars and standing on the front lines of social activism, Susan Sarandon broke into mainstream consciousness with the Rocky Horror Picture Show. As Janet Weiss, she started as a naive, demure young woman who finds herself thrust into a bizarre mansion filled with outlandish characters and provocative situations. One of the film's memorable moments involves Janet shedding her clothes, a transformation symbolizing her evolution from prudish innocence to wide-eyed adventurer. Sarandon used this scene to broadcast a clear message. She wouldn't be confined to Hollywood's standard expectations of female roles. She was versatile, equally comfortable in comedic, dramatic, and decidedly weird territory. Over the next few decades, Sarandon's filmography would underscore her continuing willingness to tackle challenging subjects, from politics to the complexities of human relationships. 6. Brigitte Bardot. Though some might associate Brigitte Bardot more with the 1950s and early 1960s, by the time the 1970s rolled around, she had solidified herself as an emblem of radical sexual freedom, so much so that even her later projects continued to ripple through pop culture. Bardot pioneered a frankness about female sexuality on screen that challenged the rigid morality codes of earlier eras. In films like In God Created Woman, she ushered in a new wave of cinematic sensuality. By the early 1970s, Bardot was still pushing boundaries. Her movie Don Juan, or If Don Juan Were a Woman, reversed the classic tale of the male seducer, placing a powerful woman in control. Bardot's on-screen nudity was never just for attention. She was rewriting narratives, demonstrating that a woman's allure could be an instrument of autonomy rather than a trap imposed by the male gaze. Off-screen, Bardot was equally outspoken, though not without controversy. Love her or loathe her, the French star's 1960s and 1970s filmography remains vital for anyone studying how women in entertainment broke free from staid conventions. Siedmu, Julie Christie. British actress Julie Christie is often associated with a more ethereal, almost understated brand of sensuality. But don't be fooled. Her performances had a piercing emotional depth that resonated with critics and audiences alike. In Don't Look Now, Christie portrayed a grieving mother who, alongside Donald Sutherland's character, is trying to process the death of a child. The film features an intimate scene so realistic that it became the subject of rumors for decades. Yet this scene was not simply about shock or titillation. It was a raw depiction of how a couple grapples with tragedy, seeking closeness and solace in each other. Director Nicholas Roeg used the scene to underscore both the fragility and resilience of human connection. Critics praised Christie's willingness to go there, to strip away all artifice and delve into genuine sorrow, confusion, and tentative hope. Her background in the swinging London scene of the 1960s gave Christie an authenticity that shone through in her roles. Whether in period dramas or contemporary romances, she managed to merge a gentle demeanor with fierce conviction, illustrating that boldness can sometimes be conveyed with remarkable subtlety. 8th, Sylvia Kristel. For anyone discussing the changing attitudes towards sexuality on screen in the 1970s, Emmanuelle is almost certain to come up. At the center of that phenomenon stood Sylvia Kristel. The film, and its subsequent sequels, broke box office records worldwide, placing a spotlight on erotic cinema in mainstream theaters. Kristel's portrayal of Emmanuelle, both wide-eyed and quietly self-possessed, embodied an era in which eroticism was openly explored, at least in certain markets. Yet for Kristel, the role became something of a double-edged sword. She found meteoric fame, but Emmanuelle's shadow followed her through most of her career, overshadowing her attempts to prove her range as an actress. Still, the original film remains significant for how it tested the limits of censorship and sparked conversations about what was permissible for wide release. It was a turning point in cinematic history, a testament to a growing appetite for stories that engage with adult themes beyond innuendo or cutaway shots. While it did not carry the emotional depth of some other films on this list, Emmanuel undeniably left a cultural footprint, and Sylvia Kristel stood at its center. Liv Ullmann, Swedish actress Liv Ullmann, epitomized nuanced emotional acting, particularly under the direction of Ingmar Bergman. One of her landmark achievements in the 1970s was Scenes from a Marriage. The film and later television miniseries offered a searing look into a couple's disintegrating relationship, with Ullmann's character navigating heartbreak, confusion, and fleeting moments of hope. While the series contains moments of nudity, it was a ploy for shock. Instead, Bergman and Ullmann used those scenes to explore themes of intimacy, vulnerability, and disconnection. Ullmann's performance revealed the unvarnished core of human relationships. Every flicker of her facial expressions conveyed volumes about the character's inner turmoil. Her work in the 1970s didn't end there. Collaborations like Cries and Whispers further cemented her status as one of the era's finest actresses, a performer unafraid to confront the rawest emotional material. For film enthusiasts, watching Ullmann is akin to taking a masterclass in restraint, subtlety, and genuine human empathy. Desiata Nastassja Kinski. Though she emerged more prominently towards the tail end of the 1970s, Nastassja Kinski's star rose quickly. Her big breakthrough arrived with Roman Polanski's Tess, in which she played Tess Durbeyfield, a young woman facing cruelty and betrayal in a society stacked against her. The film's period setting highlighted the systemic injustices that women endured, a theme strikingly relevant to conversations about Hollywood's power structures. While there are scenes that showcase Kinski's physical vulnerability, the film's thrust is Tess's emotional journey, her tragic resilience in the face of an uncaring world. Kinski inhabited the role so fully that audiences found themselves aching alongside her. It was a performance that announced her arrival as an actress capable of balancing innocence with the ferocity needed to stand her ground. From that moment on, Kinski was in demand, embodying a new kind of European star power. While her later roles would also draw acclaim, Tess remains a cornerstone, establishing her as one of the key talents to watch in the late 1970s and beyond. 11. Glenda Jackson. If any actress epitomized the unflinching approach of 1970s cinema, it was Glenda Jackson. She had already earned an Oscar for Women in Love, but her role in Ken Russell's The Music Lovers took her fearless approach even further. The film was a surreal take on the life of composer Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, with Jackson playing his wife, a woman plagued by the composer's inner turmoil and her own unraveling sanity. Scenes of nudity were shocking, but not gratuitous. They served to underline the storm of psychological anguish the characters were experiencing. Jackson's performance was a blaze of raw intensity, leaving viewers both mesmerized and uncomfortable. What sets Jackson apart is how she approached her craft like a sledgehammer, shattering any illusions that serious acting should remain polite or carefully manicured. She embodied characters descending into madness, grappling with love, or wrestling with social norms, always with the same potent conviction. In the pantheon of 1970s greats, Glenda Jackson stands firm as a testament to the era's capacity for daring storytelling. 12th, Helen Mirren. These days, Dame Helen Mirren is synonymous with regal elegance, having played various queens across the stage and screen. But rewind to the late 1970s, and you'll find a very different Helen Mirren in the infamous production of Caligula. Funded in part by a major men's magazine empire, the film teetered between historical epic and sensationalist escapade. Critics lambasted it for its over-the-top explicit content, while censors in multiple countries wrung their hands in dismay. Amid the chaos, Mirren delivered a performance that showcased her willingness to venture into treacherous territory. She was unafraid of controversy, which set her apart from more cautious actresses of the time. Although Caligula was critically panned, Mirren emerged with her reputation mostly intact, if not bolstered. She had proven her mettle by stepping fearlessly into a tumultuous project and still standing out as a bright spot of genuine talent. It was this early demonstration of grit and range that paved the way for the extraordinary roles that would follow. 13th, Margot Kidder. Long before she became Lois Lane in the Superman franchise, starting in 1978, Margot Kidder had already showcased an appetite for roles with an edge. One of these early performances came in Brian De Palma's psychological thriller, Sisters. In it, Kidder played conjoined twins separated at birth, a part that demanded her to toggle between innocence and chilling instability. De Palma, known for suspenseful storytelling, used nudity sparingly but pointedly to heighten the film's unsettling atmosphere. Kidder's performance was central to that tone, whether she was the vulnerable half of the duo or the side marred by mental instability. It wasn't merely about shock, it was about showing how fraught one's sense of self can become under extreme circumstances. Kidder's turn in Sisters marked her as an actress unafraid to take big risks. Later, when she put on the iconic mantle of Lois Lane, the contrast between that breezy portrayal and her earlier, edgier roles demonstrated her remarkable range. So to Ursula Andress, a Swiss actress who became an international sensation, Ursula Andress is often remembered for one of the most iconic bikini-clad entrances in movie history, her role as Honey Rider in the very first James Bond film, Dr. Number, 1962. While it might seem tame by today's standards, that moment was a thunderbolt in the 1960s, introducing a fresh kind of cinematic sex symbol. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Andress embraced roles that played up her stunning looks, but she occasionally sought projects that would challenge the stereotype of the Bond girl. Films like She, 1965, showcased her as a commanding, almost mythical presence. Andress was keenly aware that the industry often reduced women to ornamental figures, but she navigated this with a mix of savvy and humor. She once famously said she considered that bikini scene to be her ticket to freedom. Her career soared internationally, affording her a certain level of independence, financially and creatively. Still, critics often debated whether her physique overshadowed her acting talent. Regardless, Ursula Andress remains a key figure in the evolution of on-screen sensuality during a period where the definitions of female empowerment were under fierce negotiation. Quince, Raquel Welch. Raquel Welch burst into popular consciousness with her role in 1,000,000 Years BC. Clad in a now legendary fur bikini, she became an instant pin-up sensation. But Welch was far more than just a poster icon. She fought to be taken seriously as an actress during a time when Hollywood typed women according to looks. Throughout the late 1960s and 1970s, Welch starred in films that ranged from action adventures to comedies, including Bandolero and Myra Breckinridge. She faced controversy. Myra Breckinridge, based on the novel by Gore Vidal, tackled themes of gender identity and sexual orientation with a satirical flair. While the film itself was panned, Welch's bold participation in a project critiquing Hollywood's obsession with sex and stardom is a sign of her willingness to push boundaries. On a personal level, Welch's struggles with producers over scripts and marketing attest to how the industry commodified actresses. She consistently negotiated for more agency, challenging the narrative that a woman with her looks couldn't also command respect for her skills and intellect. Her brand of glamour, fierce, self-assured, and unafraid, remains a potent reminder of the era's shifting attitudes toward female sexuality. 16. Catherine Deneuve. If Brigitte Bardot symbolized France's explosive sexual liberation, Catherine Deneuve exemplified a more refined, yet equally provocative, take on cinematic femininity. Rising to fame in the 1960s, Deneuve frequently collaborated with legendary directors such as Luis Buñuel and Roman Polanski. In Polanski's Repulsion, 1965, she played a psychologically tormented young woman. Her vulnerability and chilling descent into madness was a revelation. By the 1970s, Deneuve's roles had expanded in scope, further testing the boundaries of her image. She was unafraid to appear in films with erotic themes, such as Buñuel's Tristana. Yet through it all, Deneuve maintained a certain poise. She managed to convey sensuality and depth without crossing the line into overt exploitation. For many, her screen presence became synonymous with the idea that nudity or sexual context could be artful, purposeful, and integral to an emotionally compelling narrative. In interviews, Deneuve spoke candidly about balancing personal comfort with directorial demands. She found ways to negotiate her boundaries, setting an example that actresses could assert themselves even while working with high-profile filmmakers in an industry that often prioritized the director's vision over the performer's well-being. 17. Jeanne Moreau. Jeanne Moreau was another pillar of French cinema, bridging the gap between classic 1950s sophistication and the freer, edgier approach that took hold in the 1960s and 1970s. Though perhaps best known for Jules and Jim, her work in the following decade continued to push creative boundaries. Known for her husky voice and expressive eyes, Moreau often gravitated toward roles that explored deep psychological and emotional terrains. She challenged what femininity could look like on screen, showcasing a woman's desires, regrets, and moral complexity. While she did occasionally appear in scenes that were more revealing, her focus was always on the story's resonance, rather than generating mere titillation. Crucially, Moreau also stepped behind the camera as a director, adding another dimension to her legacy. In a film world still dominated by men, her directing ventures underscored a simple but radical idea. Actresses could and should create their own narratives, rather than merely inhabit those penned by others. 18. Claudia Cardinale. Italian-Tunisian actress Claudia Cardinale was a staple in European cinema during the 1960s, working with the like of Federico Fellini and Luchino Visconti. Her striking beauty and earthy warmth made her a sought-after star in international co-productions. In the 1970s, she continued to deliver powerful performances in films such as The Red Tent and Gioia. While she was sometimes cast in roles that highlighted her looks, Cardinale's acting chops shone through, thanks in part to directors who recognized her talent. She rarely courted shock value, but she was unafraid of roles that had darker or more sensual undertones if the story demanded it. Off-screen, she was a vocal advocate for women's rights and consistently refused to pose nude for magazines, making clear that she would draw her own lines. Cardinale's stance offered a nuanced perspective. She didn't dismiss the artistic value of nudity or sensuality in film, but she chose to navigate these territories on her own terms. In an era fraught with power imbalances, she exemplified a measured kind of self-sovereignty. 19th, Sophia Loren. By the 1960s, Sophia Loren was already an international star and the first actress from a non-English-speaking background to win an Academy Award. Moving into the 1970s, Loren sustained a global profile while carefully selecting roles that balanced her established image with the era's shifting tastes. Unlike many contemporaries, Loren didn't rely on explicit scenes to keep audiences invested. Her sensuality radiated through a confident screen presence, comedic timing, and dramatic authenticity. She was keen to control her own narrative, working in big-budget Hollywood films and more intimate European productions. Whether in comedic fare, like Marriage Italian Style, or more serious works, Loren proved that a woman could be a global sensation without having to continuously up the ante in terms of controversy. She remains an emblem of class and resilience, a testament to how star power can transcend fleeting trends. 20. Monica Vitti. Hailed as the Queen of Italian cinema, Monica Vitti gained prominence through her collaborations with director Michelangelo Antonioni in the 1960s, particularly in the quartet of films that included L'Avventura, 1960, and Red Desert, 1964. Known for portraying existential angst and intellectual depth, Vitti was already a luminary by the time the 1970s rolled around. As she transitioned into that new decade, she began exploring lighter comedic roles, showcasing an unexpected versatility. While she wasn't known for overtly nude scenes, her work still exuded a subtle sensuality. In interviews, Vitti often spoke about how the physicality of a performance could communicate emotional truth. She believed that an actress's body language, whether clothed or partially unclothed, could reveal vulnerability, power, or isolation far more effectively than dialogue alone. Despite moving away from the stark dramas that defined her early career, Vitti never lost her taste for roles that peeled back the layers of human desire and disquiet. She maintained a robust presence in European cinema, further solidifying her place as one of the most intriguing and multifaceted actresses of her generation. 21st, Tippi Hedren. Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds propelled Tippi Hedren into public consciousness, showcasing her poise under the most terrifying circumstances, both on-screen and, as it turned out, off-screen. By the early 1970s, Hedren had distanced herself from Hitchcock due to well-documented conflicts. She took roles in smaller productions and, notably, devoted more time to activism, particularly wildlife conservation. While Hedren's filmography didn't delve as deeply into the sexual revolution mania that swept Hollywood, she deserves mention for the behind-the-scenes battles she fought. Hitchcock allegedly exerted manipulative control over her, illustrating a fundamental issue in the industry. Actresses were at the mercy of powerful directors and producers who could make or break their careers. Hedren's later interviews laid bare these imbalances, contributing to a growing awareness of how women in Hollywood were often coerced into situations where they had minimal agency. In shining a spotlight on those abuses of power, Hedren's story became a cautionary tale and a call for change. 22nd Faye Dunaway. Before she was the woman of the 1970s, Faye Dunaway exploded onto the scene with Bonnie and Clyde. That film's blending of graphic violence and rebellious sensuality heralded a new era in American cinema. By the 1970s, Dunaway was starring in gritty dramas like Chinatown and Network, showcasing her fierce intelligence and undeniable magnetism. Dunaway wasn't known for prolonged nude scenes, but her willingness to inhabit morally complex characters carried a daring equal to any physical exposure. In Chinatown, she portrayed a woman wrestling with unspeakable family secrets, exuding both vulnerability and cold determination. That delicate balance of fragility and strength became her signature. Her Oscar win for Network sealed her status as a Hollywood heavyweight. Off-screen, she fought to maintain creative control, navigating an industry that often pigeonholed actresses once they found mainstream success. Dunaway's ability to select challenging roles in major productions marks her as an architect of modern stardom, someone who recognized the marketing power of her image, but consistently used it to further stories of substantial depth. 23rd, Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn might not be the first name people associate with the counterculture vibes of the late 1960s or the edginess of the 1970s. She was, after all, the epitome of grace and elegance in the earlier decade, famed for Breakfast at Tiffany's and My Fair Lady. However, Hepburn made pivotal decisions that reflected the shifting times. In the late 1960s, she took on more dramatic roles, such as Wait Until Dark, where she played a blind woman terrorized by criminals. While she never engaged in the on-screen nudity that came to dominate tabloid headlines, her movement into darker, more psychologically intense territory mirrored the era's new cinematic language. Hepburn also significantly scaled back her acting in the 1970s to focus on her family. But when she did appear, she embraced more mature themes. Her enduring image remained one of delicate poise, proving that an actress could maintain a dignified persona while still adapting to the raw storytelling that was becoming standard. 24th, Angie Dickinson. Angie Dickinson's break came in the 1950s, but it was during the 1960s and 1970s that she solidified her iconic status. Best known for her role in Rio Bravo in the groundbreaking TV series Police Woman, Dickinson defied stereotypes about what female stars could do. In the male-dominated world of westerns and crime dramas, she held her own, portraying tough, savvy, and sexually confident characters. Though she didn't rely on nude scenes to command attention, Dickinson's on-screen aura was undeniably sensual. She displayed a layered confidence that made her stand out in an era where female characters were often secondary or limited to eye candy. On Police Woman, she became one of the first actresses to lead a successful television cop show, opening doors for future generations of women looking to break out of passive roles in TV and film. Her lasting legacy is as a pioneer who showed that an actress could be both glamorous and formidable, paving the way for the action heroines and leading ladies who followed. 25th, Jane Birkin. An English actress and singer who found her greatest fame in France, Jane Birkin was synonymous with the free-spirited ethos of the late 1960s and early 1970s. After a small but memorable part in Blow Up, She starred in Slogan, which introduced her to French singer-songwriter Serge Gainsbourg. Their collaboration ignited controversy and fascination. Birkin's on-screen roles often flirted with taboo. Films like La Piscine and Don Juan highlighted her youthful spontaneity and willingness to traverse emotional extremes. Her sometimes nude appearances were reflective of a bohemian worldview that challenged conservative attitudes in both Britain and France. Off-screen, Birkin's relationship with Gainsbourg became legendary, epitomized by the scandalous duet Je t'aime, moi non plus. Although she lived in the overlap of music and film, her cinematic contributions remain key to understanding the rebellious undercurrent of European cinema in that era. She balanced playful charm with introspective vulnerability, leaving behind an indelible impression. The 1960s and 1970s left an imprint on Hollywood that remains visible today. The fearless leaps taken by these actresses paved the way for more open discussions about consent, diversity, and creative freedom. While there's still a long road ahead, the seeds planted by these pioneers have grown into an industry that, at its best, continues to push boundaries and champion the authentic representation of all voices. As we look back on these 25 extraordinary women, each shaped by the cultural forces of the 1960s and 1970s, it's clear they collectively reshaped the landscape of cinema. Whether their on-screen nudity was a carefully orchestrated choice for artistic authenticity or a moment they felt pressured into, it contributed to an evolution in how female characters could be portrayed. They showed that a woman's agency matters, that stories centered on female experiences can command an audience, and that the emotional nakedness of a performance often resonates far more than any physical exposure ever could. Yet their experiences also highlighted the industry's rough edges, from exploitative directors to pigeonholing producers. In documenting these actresses' journeys, we witness both the triumphs of creative liberation and the cautionary tales of an industry still grappling with questions of power, ethics, and respect. The naked truth, if we can call it that, is that film has always been a mirror reflecting societal shifts. And sometimes it takes the bravery of actresses willing to bare their hearts and souls to crack that mirror wide open. Today's Hollywood stands on the shoulders of these fearless women. Their influence is felt every time an actress fights for equal pay, insists on clear boundaries in intimate scenes, or dares to say no to a role that would diminish her. And for every starstruck fan who presses play on a classic from the 1960s or 1970s, these performances remain as vital, as mesmerizing, and as provocative as ever. In peeling back the layers of these legend stories, we do more than glimpse into a bygone era. We gain insight into how cinema evolves and how, despite the challenges, the show does indeed go on.